this story is absolutely insane. If you're online, you've probably been following what's going on with actor Jonathan Joss. He played John Redcorn in King of the Hill. And now there have been conflicting reports saying that he wasn't, but maybe he was coming back for the reboot. He was shot and killed on his own property by a neighbor the other day. And you're kind of understanding where the 48-hour rule comes from for news and information, because the amount of stuff that's coming out about this story is insane. But I'm going to read Andy Ngo's tweet giving the basic information. And then I think what we'll do is we'll just kind of go through these pieces and see what we find, because I've read through all of this. I've gotten conflicting reports from everyone. And what it seems to be to me, for the most part, is it paints a picture of somebody whose life seems to be in extreme chaos. And that chaos came to a very tragic end. But let's look at this. So King of the Hill actor Jonathan Joss was shot dead on Sunday, June 1st. Joss was best known as the voice of character John Redcorn. Leftists are using unsubstantiated Facebook posts made by Joss's trans partner as evidence that Joss was killed in a homophobic hate crime by a Latino neighbor. San Antonio police dispute this statement, saying there is no evidence of hate motivation. Neighbors of Joss have made statements to local media saying that the property where Joss was killed has been an empty lot after a house fire, and that he frequently returned there and was not always a good presence in the neighborhood. They state that he often ranted outside and got into disputes with people in the neighborhood. Witnesses say he got angry if people drove past the property. Joss recently discussed his struggles with substance abuse and mental health on a podcast. And then, so you get an idea of what happened. He came home to collect his mail, or at least that's what said, when he got into a shouting match with one of his neighbors. And we're going to go through this bit here. So the alleged incident was caught on camera by a fan, happened at the Paramount Theater in Austin. What they're talking about here is that he recently went out and he started ranting at a King of the Hill panel in Texas. And it seems like his rant about this not being included in the new season actually got him a job again, because then he made another Instagram post later saying that he was on track to reprise his character. So Aiden, what was the first thing you thought of when you read about what happened here?
Well, the first thing I thought when I read it is that sounds like a hate crime, but that's mainly because of the framing.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more, because the way it was framed, how I saw it was like, somebody like stole his dog, burned it, left the skull and harness in the rubble of his old house, then drove up and shot him. And I was like, that's a hate crime. And I think what you said about the 48-hour rule is really important, because as the news has been growing about this story, it's very possible that the guy who shot him did shoot him because he's gay. On the other hand, like, the dog died in the fire. Yeah. The fire was not arson. The fire, he admitted, was started by a barbecue pit in his home.
That's the other thing that's been discussed here is, like, he had his neighbors had claimed that he was using a barbecue pit to heat his home after his power got cut off.
He admitted to doing that.
And yes, but then he walked that back and is claiming that it may have been arson, but there was no substantiated claim as to what that was, which feeds the hate crime allegations because it's unprovable at this point, and it feeds into the narrative that what happened was a hate crime right after the start of Pride Month. Back in January, the Joss family home in San Antonio, which his parents built in 1957, burnt down with his 3 dogs trapped inside. At the time, Joss blamed a gas-powered heater he had been using to when the power went out that set the house ablaze, telling the press, "Mistakes happen, man, and it's my fault for, I guess, leaving something on." During his appearance on the King of the Hill podcast on Saturday, he seemed to suggest that he had come to suspect foul play was involved in the tragic fire. So again, conflicting stories back and forth.
I mean, that's the thing, that like when the first thing you say is that you admit to the fact that you were using a propane grill inside of your house and that you forgot to turn it off, like, and then you go back.
I'm sorry, but a propane grill.
Yeah,
it is kind of funny under the circumstances.
It's too on
in a really dark way.
If he used charcoal, then we'd know who suspect number 1 would be.
Well, we talked about that before. So what's going on right now is people are pushing the narrative of a hate crime, despite the fact that the San Antonio Police Department does not believe that. At least they do not believe currently that is the case. This was the statement released by his partner. He says, "My husband, Jonathan Joss, and I were involved in a shooting while checking the mail at the site of our former home. That home was burned down after 2 years of threats from people in the area who repeatedly told us that they would set it on fire. We reported these threats to law enforcement multiple times and nothing was done. Throughout the time, we were harassed regularly by individuals who made it clear they did not accept our relationship. Much of the harassment was openly homophobic. When we returned to the site to check our mail, we discovered the skull of one of our dogs and its harness placed in clear view." So that's what I meant by when I said that they seem to be accusing someone of doing this as some type of warning to them.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is the dogs died in the fire. Are you saying somebody went back and placed that? Like, I don't know. I read that statement and it feels fishy to me.
Yes.
And look, I've said that about a lot of things. It's not just this specific instance. There's a lot of times where I've read something that somebody has said after a crime, and I'm like, you fudged the truth there. Whether they're white, black, gay, straight, like, it happens.
Yeah.
It happens frequently, and you can't take somebody's statement at face value when the evidence there is, like, within that statement, John himself said that it was not arson originally. He said he did something stupid and he regretted it, and this person who knows the truth is now fudging that truth to make it sound more like a hate crime.
And I think that this is going on because it is the start of Pride Month.
I think if he had died in April, this
people
would not
are
have been
on edge.
people are looking for a story. Like the
Yeah.
same thing happened yesterday when JoJo Siwa posted a picture with her boyfriend.
Yeah.
And people were like, this is like the ultimate denial of
Right.
that lifestyle to do that at the start of June. But that's for people that are super ideologically driven that really want to focus on this. This is what one of his neighbors said. So his neighbor, Isabel Caballero, who's lived on the block since 2021, told the press that she witnessed the aftermath. Here, let me put this up on screen here. She witnessed the aftermath of the shooting that occurred at 7 p.m. She said she initially thought it was a relative who lived nearby, but realized when Joss was after running to the scene after seeing 3 gunshots in the neighborhood, Caballero saw Joss with a gunshot wound to his neck. She said that Joss had visited his home to retrieve his mail when he started freaking out, and when he saw the remains of his dog outside, which burned down in January, she said she didn't think much of it because he was known to be yelling, and he was known to be doing this frequently about the neighborhood. Quote, "He would just walk up and down the street. He would just, scream," she said. "He was very loud, but we knew how he was, so we didn't disturb him. Even if he looked at us, talked mess to us, we just ignored him because we knew that's how it was." So what all of this, between this and looking at the interviews, it just feels like a really, really tragic story of somebody whose life was spiraling. If you look at the way things are now, that's not to say that what happened wasn't some type of hate crime. I don't know. I can't know for sure what was in the heart of this dude who did this to him, but to say it's not tragic would be a lie.
Yeah, it's first-degree murder no matter what, and it's fully unjustified first-degree murder.
Well,
you can't shoot somebody for screaming.
And what people are missing too, I went to high school in San Antonio. The part of town he lived in is notoriously the most violent part of San Antonio.
Okay.
So okay, this guy clearly had some mental issues. He's crashing out in the street. These things, they kind of have a little bit of justice, a system of justice that's off the books in that part of town.
Not interested in the cops.
Right.
This was another post, the Quartering post this, and this was taken from Facebook. At the very least, I couldn't follow this person on Facebook, but it is a real account. So this was a person who posted, person's name's Sammy, says, "I lived across from this man for years. He started gunfights constantly and burnt his own house down trying to make a meth lab inside." Again, that is
Probably
specious.
wasn't trying to make a meth lab.
He constantly threatened his surrounding neighbors and played victim when cops came. Many neighbors have video proof of his torment. He used to throw bricks through my window and tore several of our mailboxes down. He was armed when he was shot and killed, and no one on that block ever yelled homophobic slurs at him. It's all a lie from the husband for sympathy.
See, the armed when shot and killed thing hasn't been in the media.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that one could change things, because if he brandished a weapon, that changes things significantly.
And that makes, and that's going to be something that has to come out later. But the picture that has been painted is look, he showed up at this, he did the taping with the podcast, and it was, I don't know what the guy was like normally, but it was rambling. There was even this post the other day, or from 2 years ago, from the King of the Hill Reddit. from r/King of the Hill about Jonathan Joss behaving erratically, and this person made a post about it, just wondering if the guy was okay. It says, I know this is a long shot, but I'm concerned about Jonathan Joss. He played Ken in Parks and Rec and was the voice of John Redcorn in King of the Hill. I don't know the man or where he lives, otherwise I'd have reached out to his local authorities. I was on TikTok Lives when I came across his feed. He was behaving very erratically and seemed extremely agitated. He was talking a lot, but not making any sense, alternating between addressing and threatening someone who wasn't there, and he had a weapon with him and brandished it at the camera. He was in his underwear throwing water around in his living room. There was only about 10 to 15 people watching him at any given time. Towards the end, he started making tortillas. I don't have a screen recorder, otherwise I would have saved it. He also is just posting a lot of bizarre videos. So
it sounds like he was definitely going through something, whether it was mental health or drugs. I mean, from what I can tell, it sounds like he was broke. Like it wasn't that his electricity went out. It was that it was shut off. Yeah. So this sounds like another one of those very tragic situations where there was a person who was in need of help, who wasn't getting it for some reason or another, and that came to a head and caused this, whatever this was. Like, is it possible it was a homophobic hate crime? Yes. Is it also possible that this guy should have been in a psychiatric institution and placed there for his own good? Yeah, that's probably what happened.
It just makes me think of like what it's like when you see these actors who fall out of favor and then their lives kind of take that turn, and Hollywood is full to the brim with stories of just the most tragic the most tragic tales you've ever heard, and my heart breaks for him if all no, I don't want anybody to die, but I don't know what happened here, and a lot of people are kind of making their assumptions. The people going off the evidence are going to go off what the police are saying right now, which is that there is no evidence as of yet of a hate crime, but they've only been looking into it for 48 hours or less than that at that time that was made.
It sounds like the only evidence that it was a hate crime is what was said by his husband. Yeah. Which, if the person who shot him comes out and says, no, he brandished a weapon and I fired in self-defense, that's he said, she said, and then where do you go from there? The cops can't really come to any conclusion. He's probably going to have to prove that it was self-defense in some form or another. Yeah. But then the other guy is going to have to prove that it was a homophobic issue. So I think, if anything, what this is just yet another instance of we need to figure out what to do about mental health. We had a system up until the 1980s.
Thanks, Reagan.
It wasn't. I want to be clear. I'm not advocating for the asylum system we had in the mid 20th century. It was horribly abusive. But we need something like that back that is, has better oversight, less abuses, because the way things are right now, you've got people like this who should be somewhat high profile given his history, and maybe something like this happening leads to the kind of change we need to see. But you go and you see, like, homeless people didn't used to be on the streets as much.
Yeah, they used to be fun. They used to like flip them a nickel. They'd do a jig.
Okay.
You don't get that, and now they just try to stab you.
Yeah, but that's my point. Is like there are a lot of people who would be better off in state
and
housing.
a rubber Ramada. That's what we need. Bring them back.
And we don't have that right now because it was abused so horribly.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.